Everyone, and welcome to the last class before the final exam. So I feel like the first part of this course went by pretty quickly. The first part of this course I think went by slowly, and then the second part went by really quick. We're already at the end of the semester. Your final exam is next week on April 22nd. I've made it start at 3:55 p.m. so you can log on then, and it's going to end at 6:30, I believe. It's a 2.5-hour exam, so just like your midterm. Okay. So what the plan is for today's class is to go through chapter 15. So the first thing I want to do is just go through the assignment real quick for any like general questions that you have on the assignment and how I marked it. If anybody does want to discuss their assignment after class, we could do that. So we could just do a discussion after class. If anybody wants to do a one-to-one discussion of the assignment to see where you went wrong or to understand something better. And then we'll do chapter 15. I have one question that we'll do for chapter 15 from the class exercises because I just wanted to have enough time to do the final exam review. So we'll do the one question from chapter 15, we'll do the EcoPack case, and then we'll leave it up to you to ask me any questions you have about the final, about any of the technical from chapters 1 through 15, anything that you want to ask me and get things clarified before next week. Okay, so that's the plan of what we're going to do. So the assignment, so just quickly talking about that. Some people did really well, some people not so well. It was kind of a mix. Don't know what I can check what the average was, but it was a mix. Like some people did really well and some people did not so well. So the people that sent me the rough draft before the due date. So I had said send me the rough draft the week before. So the people that did that did really well because they basically got it marked twice, right? So I like reviewed the rough draft, made sure that they changed everything, and then got them to, and then they changed everything, and then they did pretty well. Almost, one person got perfect after sending me the rough draft, and then a few other people were in their 90s, the ones that sent me the rough draft. The average here was 62%, but again, like it was a lot of, some people did really well, some people didn't do well. So I feel like it's hard to look at that average because it was just all kind of like high or low, basically. So just some things that I wanted to point out. Some people calculated, so for your audit risk model, some people calculated what audit risk was going to be, but you don't calculate audit risk, you assign a value to audit risk, right? So you assign a value to audit risk, and then you calculate detection risk, okay? So you decide what your audit risk is going to be, how much risk are you willing to take on this audit. Okay? Inherent risk and control risk, especially for inherent risk, you want to explain why those risks or those factors that you were discussing lead to a material misstatement on the financial statements. So some people were just talking about business risks, the risk to the company, but we're not linking it back to what the inherent risk is, which is because there's a lot of competition or because of COVID-19, you want to explain how this would lead to having a misstatement in the financial statements. Could management be incentivized to manipulate the revenue numbers to show higher revenue than there actually is? Okay, so that's the kind of thing you have to think about. So how could that factor lead to a material misstatement on the financial statements? And detection risk, the lower the detection risk, the more procedures samples you have to do. So I saw some people say the opposite. So the lower the detection risk means that you have to do more samples, more procedures, more work in order to make sure that detection risk is low. For the rest of it, people did fairly well. For staffing, some people didn't explain like which staff will be on the audit. They just said like, we need 4 people for this audit, but didn't explain what their positions were going to be. And some people didn't have an audit partner. So you always have an audit partner on the audit because that's the person that has to sign off on the audit report. And so there's always an audit partner signing off. Okay. Otherwise, for the approach section, in order, so you have to choose between combined approach and substantive approach. To decide whether or not you're going to choose combined approach is based on your controls, is based on how strong the company's controls are. So you would want to go back to your internal control and your risk analysis and say, so because control risk was assessed at low, that means there are good controls in the company that we can rely on, and therefore we would be doing combined approach. So you do need to link it back to your control risk of why you can do test of controls. So some people missed that. For materiality, when you're discussing the users, discuss what in the financial statements the users are interested in. So that's either like revenue or assets or net income, because that's going to help you determine what the materiality basis is going to be. So the basis is based on the user. So if most users are interested in net income, that's your basis. And then the percentage, also like the more users you have, the more important the number is for the financial statement users, the lower the percentage you want it to be. And then for performance materiality, that you would link to risk. Okay, so the whole materiality would link to the users. Performance materiality you would link to risk. The higher the risk of material misstatement, the lower the percentage you want. And then audit procedures, I still wasn't satisfied with the level of audit procedures for most of them. You want to be detailed, step by step procedure on what you have to do. So when you're doing procedures on the final exam, read, like after you finish writing the procedure, read it and think about whether this sounds like instructions that somebody can follow. Like, will somebody be able to know what to do? So if you're just saying, recalculate the loan balance, that doesn't tell me what exactly I have to do. Like, how do I recalculate it? What information do I look at? So you can say, inspect the loan agreement for the interest rate and the principal amount or the fair value amount, and then take the information to recalculate the loan. And then when you are doing a recalculation, you have to look at what do you do with that? So you've recalculated something. You're going to have to compare that to what they've recorded on the books to determine if it's reasonable, right? Even with confirmations, if you're getting a third-party confirmation, what are you confirming? What numbers are you confirming? And then once you get the confirmation back, you want to compare that to what the company has recorded to determine if it matches. Okay, so you just need that whole step. So don't just say send AR confirmations. So you can say, send positive AR confirmations of what the balance is that this customer owes. And then once obtained, compare to what is shown as the AR for that customer, okay, to see if it matches. All right, any general questions on the assignment? And like I said, if any of you guys want to discuss it, we could do so after class if you want to discuss your particular assignment. But any general questions on the assignment or anything? Doesn't seem like it. All right, if you do have a question, you can, if you're still typing or something, I'll address it once I see it. But otherwise, let's move on to chapter 15. So chapter 15 was just kind of closing up the audit. What are the ending procedures that you need to do to end off the audit? We already know what type of report would need to be provided given the different types of misstatements that are on the financial statements, and whether they're material or not, whether the client is going to fix those before we release our report. But chapter 15 talks about the last minute procedures you need to do after you're kind of done your field work. So you would do analytical procedures again at the end of the audit, just in case something looks off after they've done their adjustments and stuff. You would send out a lawyer letter. Okay? So you would send out a lawyer letter to detect any contingencies and claims. We'll talk about that in the EcoPack case. You look at some subsequent events, we're going to talk about that in our exercise we're going to do today. And then we also have management's written representations. So the management or whoever is in charge of the financial statements needs to write a letter on the client's letterhead addressed to the auditor and has to be signed by whoever is responsible and dated as of the audit report. And it's basically the management stating that, you know, that everything is, from their knowledge, everything is correct in the financial statements, that there is no fraud going on that they're aware of, that they've given the auditor all the information about any contingencies, allegations, claims that they're aware of. So basically it's management saying that, you know, we did all this stuff. There's nothing else that you should know. We've given you everything that you need, kind of thing. Okay? It does, so, you know, when something's in writing, hopefully you'll get people to be truthful. But it does, you know, provide weak evidence because it's just what the client is saying, like what management is saying. They're saying, yeah, we did all this stuff, but you don't know if they actually did or not. So it does provide weak evidence. You would try to corroborate as much evidence as you can from that, but sometimes it's the only type of evidence that you would have. All right, any general questions on chapter 19 before we go over to the exercise? Questions on chapter 19? Sorry, 15. Okay. All right, so the exercise I want to do is DC 15.5. Let me share my screen so I can show it to you. All right, so this has to do with subsequent events. So there's two types of subsequent events. So the subsequent events is after year end, but before the financial statements are finalized. So, you know, the year end is December 31st, but in like January, February, March, the auditor's in there trying to figure out if everything's done properly. And then after the audit's done and everything, that's when your financial statements are finalized. So in between that time, after year end and before the financial statements are finalized, those are called subsequent events. And they're events that were either, so there's two types. So it's events that they're either going to, where you have to, or where the client has to adjust something on their financial statements, or they're going to have to disclose something on their financial statements. Okay, so they're events that would lead to either an adjustment of the year-end financial statements or a disclosure on something in the year-end financial statements, or none of the above, depending on what type of event it is. Okay, so I'm assuming you're learning, if you're taking Intermediate Accounting 2 right now, or taken it in the past, you should be talking about subsequent events in chapter 23, which maybe you were talking about that this week or last week. So if you've done Intermediate Accounting 2 or you're in it right now, you should be talking about it. Or maybe you have that class tomorrow. I'm not sure what the schedule is like. So this should be familiar to you. Okay, so basically what I want you to do for this activity is there's these 5 independent cases. Okay, so there's 5 different events that happened after year end, but before the financial statements were finalized. Okay, so you're completing your audit in February 2022 for the year end December 31st, 2021. So for each of the subsequent events, what I want you to do is indicate whether the auditee company should adjust their December 31st, 2021 year-end financial statements or disclose the event, okay? Or do nothing, basically. So I have a Google Doc ready so here's the question. So these are all the events. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so these are all the events that are showing up in the question. So I want you to determine whether you're going to adjust the year-end financial statements for whatever this event is. Are you going to disclose it or are you going to do neither? Okay. So for like the first one, during January 2022, which is after year end, the company's management decided to sell real estate properties that accounted for approximately 40% of its total revenues in 2021. So do you have to go back and adjust the 2021 financial statements for this? Or do you have to disclose on the 2021 financial statements for this? Or do you do none of the above? Okay. So let me share this Google Doc with you guys. And then you guys can get started on that. And then let me know if you guys have any questions. I will just, the Google Doc is pretty small. I'll just kind of have the question from the textbook here. And you guys can fill out the Google Doc. Okay, let me know if you have any questions while you're filling it out. Figure out if you're disclosing, adjusting, or doing nothing. Okay, so there's 9 of you here, so I should see 9 answers. It's okay if you're repeating the answer that somebody else already did. You know, I want to see if you guys are participating.
Sorry, I just joined the meeting. Is there a Google Docs for this to be completed on?
There is. Let me paste it onto the chat. Yeah.
Thank you.
So either write adjust, disclose, or neither for each subsequent event. What do you have to do to the financial statements?
When we say adjust, that means to go back and adjust the previous statement.
Yes, the December 31st, 2021 statement. So these are subsequent events that happened before the financial statements are finalized. So there's still time to make an adjustment if required.
Would we have to give a reason as to why this?
No, you don't. You don't need a reason. We can talk about that together.
The statements we're auditing, is it for February or the year before?
The year end is December 31st, 2021, and you're now doing the audit. So you're now it's February 2022, like a couple months after year end, and you're doing the audit. So these events happen after year end, but before the financial statements are finalized.
Oh, I see.
So as an auditor, you have to decide these 5 events. Do we have to go back and get the client to adjust their statements or disclose this information in their just 2021 statements?
Oh, I see.
So basically what you're trying to decide is, did the issue or the event that's happening right now, does it affect any year-end numbers? So does it actually affect the numbers that the client had December 31st? Or if it doesn't affect the numbers, but is it something that the users should know about, which would make it disclosure? Okay, so like maybe it wasn't apparent in 2021, but a couple of weeks later, a month later, it happened, and now your 2021 information is changed. So you want to make your users aware of that. I don't see anyone else writing, so I guess we can take this up. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so let's take this up. Okay. So the first one, during January 2022, the company decided to sell rental real estate properties that accounted for approximately 40% of their total revenues. So three people saying disclose, one person saying adjust. Okay. So I think I agree with the majority here. If this, if management decided to sell at the end of 2021, then I would say definitely adjust. You would have to look at the real estate properties and adjust them as held for sale properties. So you would have to change it to held for sale, which is usually like whatever the fair value is, or whatever the value that they can sell it for. But they did make the decision after year end. So as of year end, as of 2021, they had no intention of selling off the real estate properties. So therefore, that's why we wouldn't adjust. But they've made the decision in 2022 that they're going to sell. So in this case, they do want to disclose this information in the 2021 financial statements because it is a big portion of the revenue. So they want to say that, okay, yeah, we have all the real estate properties as our assets in 2021, but just note that we're deciding to sell those. So we've made a decision to sell those properties. So this is letting the users know that, yes, right now, those assets are on the account, or sorry, are assets, but they won't be assets for much longer. So what you have to do is make sure the company decided to sell in January, right? So you don't want them to pretend that they were waiting until January to say or to make an announcement that they were going to sell them or to decide that they were going to sell them. Maybe they were thinking or had already decided to sell them in 2021, but told the auditors in 2022 that, oh, we made this decision in 2022, so we don't have to adjust anything in the prior year. So you do need to kind of figure out if they did actually decide this in 2022, where you can look at the board of director minute meetings, because a type of decision like this, it would be a decision that the board of directors make. So you could look at the meetings, you could look at the meetings from 2021 year and see if there was any mention of selling off these properties or talking about it or deciding about it. So that would kind of help determine if this was decided before year end or after year end. Any questions on this one? So disclose would be the answer in this case. All right, the second one, the company's main factory was closed for 6 weeks in January, February of 2022 because of ice storm damage. The factory resumed full operations in late February. Okay, so this ice storm damage could have like damaged, some of the inventory, or they weren't making as much inventory, so they wouldn't be able to sell as much in 2022, but it doesn't have anything to do with 2021 numbers because this happened after year end. Okay, so the inventory was correct in 2021. The asset value of that factory was correct in 2021. This happened in 2022. So we should let the users of the financial statements know that, the sales that you saw for 2021 might not be the same as 2022 because for 6 weeks the factory was closed. So they weren't able to get any business. So we would want to disclose this, but we wouldn't have to adjust anything in the 2021 financial statements. But we would want to tell the users that, because like the users look at 2021 financial statements and they kind of like project or foresee what's going to happen in 2022. So if there's all these things that are going to happen in 2022, that's going to definitely change the financial statements a lot. That's something that that the user should know about. And the next one, and stop me if you guys have a question or anything. One of the company's factories was destroyed in a fire in late January. The plant was old and will not be replaced, as production can be taken up by excess capacity in other plants. So I agree with all of you guys here. You said disclose. So on the December 31st, 2021 financial statements, this factory was an asset on their books, and it should remain an asset on their books in 2021. This fire happened in late January of the next year. So whatever they wrote as their asset value in 2021 was correct. But in late January, they're going to take this asset off their books and record a loss because it was destroyed. So the type of disclosure, you would want to have disclosure here because you want to say, okay, December 31st, we said we had a factory of this much money. But to let the users know, a few weeks later, the factory burned down, and therefore we're no longer going to have that asset on our books in 2022. Okay, so we'd want to disclose that one. It looks like this one, only 2 people did this one. One person said neither, one person says disclose. So let's read it. In late February, the company's board of directors agreed to settle an outstanding claim by paying $5 million to former employees. The employees suffered health problems related to asbestos exposure during the years of their employment. A contingent liability was not accrued as of December 31st, 2021, because of the uncertainty surrounding the outcome of the lawsuit. So if you remember the rules around contingencies, which you would have done in Intermediate Accounting 2, I think chapter 13 or 14, contingent liabilities, you would record a liability on the books if it is likely that the company is going to have to pay that in the future. Okay, so they got sued here by the employees for 15, whatever the amount they got sued for. And from that, the lawyer, you would have to talk to the client would have to talk to a lawyer and say, okay, is it likely that we're going to have to pay out this amount? And if it is likely or probable that they're going to have to pay out the amount, then they have to accrue for it. They need to record a liability on their balance sheet for this. This company decided not to do an accrual because they thought there was uncertainty surrounding whether they would win the lawsuit or lose the lawsuit, whether they would have to pay any money or not pay any money. But in late February, they found out that yes, they do have to pay money. They have to pay $15 million. So it's no longer uncertain. Now the company has more information that they actually made a wrong judgment call here by not accruing because they thought it was uncertain. But, you know, a couple months later, you find out that it is certain that they'll have to pay the $15 million, which they got sued for it in 2021. So they do have to accrue for that 15 million in 2021. So the answer to this one is that they would have to do an adjustment. So they'd have to go back to 2021 and do a contingent liability for $15 million. Okay, that's because their assessment around the fact that it was uncertain was wrong because they actually ended up having to pay.
I think I misunderstood this question because I thought the 15 million wasn't something they were ordered to pay, but something they decided to pay to settle out of court. And
Yes.
so I thought therefore the uncertainty would have remained, but their decision changed it so that
Well,
2020
yeah, they
that 20
decided to settle. Like, it's basically, do you have to pay money or do you not have to pay money is what you're deciding.
Oh,
Um,
I see.
it doesn't matter if they're settling or they're going to court and the judge is deciding. It's, are they going to have to pay out money? So December 31st, 2021, you have to decide, is it likely that they're going to have to pay something, or is it not likely they're going to have to pay something?
Oh, I see.
So they thought it was not likely they had to pay it. That's why they didn't accrue for it. But then 2 months later, they ended up paying $15 million. So they did actually have to do an accrual. So they should have done an accrual in 2021, basically. So here they would have to accrue a $15 million liability for this. So just a kind of a rule of thumb for substantive, sorry, for subsequent events. If it's like an estimate, so this is a type of estimate. The company decided that they estimated that they wouldn't have to pay anything. So then they didn't record a liability. So their estimate was wrong. So then they have to go back and accrue it. So when you're deciding whether to make an adjustment or not, if it was an estimate that they got wrong, that's usually an adjustment. If it's something that happened after year end that doesn't affect that wouldn't ever at all affect the 2021 numbers, then you would probably disclose, depending on how important this is for the users to know. Okay. All right, to the last one. For the past 4 years, the company has made 90% of its revenue and profits from sales of specialty cable to computer manufacturers. Early in 2022, it has become apparent that there is a massive overcapacity in this industry, and demand for this product has fallen to almost zero. It is not expected to recover for several years and may never recover if alternative technologies develop in the meantime that make the product unnecessary. So 2 people said disclose, 1 person said neither. The fact that they might lose 90% of their revenues in the future is something that probably should be disclosed to the financial statement users if the auditor can find some sort of evidence on the impact of this to the company's future operations. So if the auditor can find some sort of evidence that this is going to affect, 90% of the revenue, and they're going to have like a lot less revenue in 2022, then they should do a disclosure. If there isn't really evidence that maybe they can sell this off to, maybe they're like the best in the competition and they can sell this they could be the ones selling this to the computer manufacturers and maybe nobody else can or something. Then we could do either. If we're not sure how this is going to impact future sales, then we would do neither. But if we can get some evidence on how this is going to impact future sales, like 2022 sales, then we would have to disclose it. So if there's some sort of evidence that auditors can find that the change in this market condition is going to affect the future operations and sales of the company, then we would need to disclose. Otherwise, we would do neither. So you guys are all right here, I guess. Any questions on any of these? Questions? I never know if you're typing a question or not. The chat function should let me know if somebody's typing, then I can see. Then I could wait, but I never know. All right, while waiting for a possible question, let's discuss EcoPack. Okay, so this was your last EcoPack case. I bet you guys are happy to not have to submit any more EcoPack pre-work cases. All right, so basically they're almost done the audit. So one of the last procedures to do is to obtain a response from the company's lawyers to the legal inquiry letter regarding any legal claims. Okay, so and this is one of the last procedures that auditors would do just in case there are some subsequent events. So we saw that subsequent event where they decided to settle and pay 15 million. So that's why we want to do this as one of the last procedures, that to see is there any information on an existing claim that that they would have to accrue for or something. So it's a legal letter, so kind of like a confirmation to the lawyer on whether there are any existing claims or outstanding claims that the auditor is not already aware of that could lead to recording a liability on these books. So the client sends it, but the auditor would take a look at it and say, okay, like, yeah, this looks good, send it to the lawyer. So the client sends it to the law firm, but the law firm has to respond directly to the audit firm. Okay, so the client does not get it back because, and if the client gets it back and then gives it to the auditor, the client can tamper with that letter or the information before giving it to the auditor. So it actually has to go straight to the auditor. Same thing with any AR confirmations or bank confirmations or AP confirmations. The client sends it out on like the client's letterhead and everything, but the return address is to the auditor. So the auditor is the first person to get it. They know that this information has not been tampered with the client. So the letter states that there are no claims or possible claims with respect to which the law firm's advice or representation has been sought and which are outstanding. So basically EcoPack says we have no claims, possible claims, and then they're just confirming with the lawyer that that's true. Problem is that wasn't true. There is a possible claim against EcoPack that was not on the letter. So EcoPack, the lawyer, Charles, ends up having a conference call to discuss how is he going to respond to the letter if what this statement is not true. Okay. So there's a possible claim. So lawyers and clients need to have lawyer-client confidentiality. So this lawyer is saying, well, you didn't mention this claim in your letter, so I don't want to mention it to the auditor unless I get permission, your permission to do so. Okay, so the lawyer would need permission from the client in order to send a response to the auditor of something that doesn't look right. Like the letter could have said there is one possible claim, and it could have shown a few of the details and saying there are no other possible claims. So that's what the letter should have said, but it didn't. So the lawyer is like, well, I'm not going to tell the auditor if you don't want the auditor to know because we have client-lawyer confidentiality. He said that the work that he's done so far, it's unlikely that the claim will proceed against EcoPack. So the lawyer's thinking that this is unlikely, that the companies, like, they're going to win the lawsuit. They're not going to have to pay any money. And so he thinks that, you probably won't have to pay anything, so it's unlikely that this will go anywhere. Um, so then on the last day of field work, the partner and manager of the auditors arrange a meeting with Nina and Cam to go over the final draft of the financial statements and discuss any remaining issues. So usually it's an ending kind of meeting with the auditors to discuss anything outstanding, including those written representations that Nina and Cam will be asked to provide in the letter. Okay, so again, like I said, there's a written management representation, which management, or in this case, Nina and Cam, are writing a letter saying that, everything's correct that we've told you, basically. So the problem is not everything is correct, because in the representation letter, Nina says that we need to alter the line about us not being aware against any legal claims, because there actually is a legal claim. But there's a remote possibility, and it could never add up to anything more than a very small amount. But it is a possible claim that the auditor should know about. The auditor does not want to, the client does not want to accrue or even disclose the matter. So that's why I guess they didn't want to tell the auditor, because they didn't want this on their books, on their financial statements. But the auditor says, okay, well, we have to, if the claim is remote, so if it's not material, it's a very small amount, and it's not likely to actually end up having a payout, then they probably don't have to do an accrual or disclosure, because it's a lot less of materiality probably, and it doesn't look like they're going to lose any money for this. So the auditor is saying, yeah, we probably don't have to accrue or disclose it, but we do need to do some work to figure it out. So they'll have to talk to the lawyer and figure out if they do have to do an accrual or disclosure. It looks like they won't have to, because it's not material, but they'll have to figure it out. Okay, so the written management representation basically says that, that goes through all these details and says that the client has told the auditors everything. There is no possible claims. There is no this. There's no contingencies that we haven't recorded. And they do have to sign off on that letter. So maybe that will help their conscience, knowing that they have to like write it out and sign it. Might help them be more truthful, but you never know. All right, so that's the last EcoPack case. So lawyer letter is one of the last procedures that we do to determine if there are any outstanding claims that we might have to get the client to accrue for or disclose. Any questions on this? Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the final exam then. So final exam, I think I did give you some detail about this last week. The final exam is going to be testing chapters 1 through 15. There's going to be 8 short answer questions on the exam. No multiple choice, no case, like there was in the midterm. So just 8 short answer questions. The short answer questions, some of them are similar to the type of short answer questions you got in the midterm, so technical questions. Some of them are just like a little scenario-based question, and you would have to answer from there. Okay, so some purely technical, and some that give you a little scenario, and you have to answer it. Okay, it's testing chapter 1 to 15. The other class asked me about the weighting between pre-midterm and post-midterm. There is more weighting on after the midterm than before the midterm. But with that being said, like you really do need to understand the pre-midterm material in order to do the post things. So For example, chapter 11 to 14 was all about audit procedures. So you know you're going to have audit procedures on the exam. You're going to have to come up with audit procedures on the exam. But chapter 6 talked about assertions, and chapter 8 talked about audit techniques, like for your procedures. So you do need to understand chapter 6 and chapter 8 in order to come up with procedures, because you do need to know what assertion you're testing for, and you need to know those audit techniques like inspection, vouching, tracing, because you need to use those words when you're coming up with your audit procedures. So even though the weighting is going to be more on the content for the second half, the first half is something you need to understand in order to be doing the questions for the second half. Okay, but otherwise there are a few questions, maybe 2 or 3 questions on first half material, and then the rest I think would be second half of, so between chapters 9 and 15. But again, you do need to be able to understand chapters 1 to 8 to be able to understand chapters 9 to 15. Like another example of that is chapter 9 talked about internal controls, but chapter 7 also talked about internal controls. So you need to understand chapter 7 in order to understand chapter 9. So that's how, I guess, it is cumulative in nature. So 8 short answer questions, a mix of technical or like little scenarios, but no multiple choice, no case. And the exam, so you should see it. See if I made it available for you guys to see. So if you go into quizzes, yeah, you should see it. It's going to open on April 22nd, which is next Thursday at 3:55 p.m. and close at 6:30 p.m. or be due at 6:30 p.m. Okay. It does require lockdown browser and response monitoring, just like it did last time for your midterm. So make sure you have your student ID ready to show on the webcam, because it's going to prompt you to do that. So make sure you show that. Don't have any notes or anything around you. You're not allowed to look at any information. If you do have technical difficulties or do have a question during the exam and you are in lockdown browser, you can go on your phone in order to contact me through the WebEx. So come the same link that you come on during class. If you have any technical difficulties or any questions or anything during the exam. So I'll be on WebEx waiting for anyone who has any questions or anything. That's the only time that you can come on your phone, because if you are in lockdown browser on your computer, then you can't come on your computer. So you can do that on your phone if you need to, but otherwise put your phone away. No notes. You can't refer to any notes. This isn't open book or anything like that. All right, any questions about the final exam? We only went through one question in chapter 15 because I wanted to have time for any questions between anything from chapter 1 to 15. So if you're confused about anything from chapter 1 to 15 that you want to clarify before next week, we can talk about that now. Any other questions about the final exam?
In terms of the final exam, will it be formatted similar to the midterm where you can't move on to the next question until you finish the first one?
No, that's a good question. I forgot to mention that. So a lot of people didn't like that during the midterm. So I took that functionality out. So now you can go back and forth. You can answer the questions in whichever order you want. You can go back to a previous question and add some more stuff to it. So that restriction will not be there for the final exam.
The other thing I meant to ask with the final exam was that if we needed to use the washroom in the middle of the exam, how would we access that option?
Come on WebEx and let me know. So then when I see, yeah, just come on WebEx and just let me know. Like, I'm just gonna quickly run to the washroom. So then I know like what time you did that. And then if I see you on the camera running away, then I'll know why.
I don't think I have WebEx on the phone. The recording of the exam, does it record sound as well? Could we just say to the camera, I gotta use the washroom?
I don't think it records sound. I can double check that for you. Yeah, you can just do that. If you mouth the words, like just in case that it doesn't record sound, if you mouth the words clearly enough and you're like, and I can see that you're trying to tell me something, then I should be able to figure it out.
In case I'll keep a sign that says I got to use a washroom, and then I
Yeah,
can just
that
pull it
would,
up and then run.
yeah, that would be nice.
My concern is that I think it has facial recognition, so if I left the room, they might lock me out of the
I don't think it
exam.
should, but if you do get locked out, you can get back in. And as
Okay.
Nita's saying, I think it does record sound. Yeah, so I don't, trying to remember what happened last time. I don't know if I had my like sound on when I was reviewing them. Um, but I can double check that. But yeah, you can do that, or you can mouth the words. I should be able to figure it out through lip reading. But try to go to the bathroom before the exam, and then hopefully you don't need to go during. But you know, if you have to go, you have to go. I can't really prevent you from not. So, what else do I want to talk to say? To again, be really detailed in your audit procedures, right? So you will have audit procedures on your exams. Make sure you're detailed. There's something else I wanted to say. Uh,
What would you say would be the best advice for studying for the exam?
Oh yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. So you want to go through those like lecture videos that I had posted that you're supposed to go through before class. So go through those videos, go through all the in-class problems. So sometimes we didn't get through all of the in-class problems in class. So I want you to go through all of them. Like today, I think there was 3 in-class problems for chapter 15. Um, we only did one of the 3, but that doesn't mean the other 2 aren't important. So you want to go through all 3 of them. So go through. So I think like the 2 things that you should definitely do is go through the lecture slides. Sorry, go through the lecture videos, go through all the in-class problems that I posted all the solutions for, and then also go through the textbook. But go through my lecture videos, you can go through and look at the recorded lectures again for anybody who missed class, and then redo those in-class questions, all the in-class questions, not just the ones that we took up in class. It is important, especially chapters 11 to 14, to go through those recorded lectures again, so you can hear like the types of audit procedures that I want, the detail in the audit procedures, if you didn't come to class. Okay, so I just want to make sure you guys go through all of the in-class questions and not just the ones that we covered in class, because we don't always have a chance to take up all of them, but they're all important.
And you'd like us to familiarize ourselves with the diagrams from the textbook that were referenced in the
So
slides.
yeah, so that will just help you come up with audit procedures. You do have to be more detailed than what those audit programs are saying, but that will just help you think of like a starting point for audit procedures if you're really stuck and don't know where to begin.
For those with the option of writing with extra time for the final, should be requested by email or is it automatically set for us?
No, request by email,
Okay.
so then I can set it up. Any other questions? If you do have other questions while you're studying, and you come across like a technical issue that you don't understand, make sure you email me. So you can email me any of your questions. We could always set up like a WebEx chat if you need to go through anything. So if you might not have any questions now because you haven't really studied too much now, but maybe you'll study on the weekend and then have some questions for me next week. So you can either email me the questions or request to set up a chat, and then we can go through anything that you need to get clarified, need to get clarity on. Any other questions? All right, if you guys don't have any questions, you guys can take off. If there is anybody that does want to discuss your assignment, then you can stick around, and then I can put you guys in separate breakout rooms and we can discuss that. But otherwise, everybody else, you guys can take off. I guess this is the last class, so thank you everyone for coming to class and paying attention and everything. And if you guys don't have any issues or questions, I'm not going to see you next week. So take care. Have a great summer. Good luck.